You're a disgrace to this family. We need a real woman to give us an heir. The words sliced through me like a blade. I stood frozen in the grand dining hall, the soft glow of the chandeliers contrasting with the cold, cruel stares directed at me. My mother-in-law, Beatrice Lancaster, sat at the head of the table, her expression sharp with triumph. My husband, Elliot, stood beside her, holding a crisp stack of papers. Divorce papers. Already signed. I couldn't breathe. Let me back up for a moment. My name is Serena Whitmore. I'm 33 years old and a senior financial analyst in New York. I built my career from scratch, working late nights and fighting for my place in a male-dominated industry. 5 years ago, I married Elliot Lancaster, the heir to Lancaster Holdings, one of the biggest real estate empires in the country. I thought I had found my forever. I was wrong. From the moment I married into the Lancaster family, I was an outsider. Beatrice, the matriarch of the family, made sure I never forgot it. She came from old money, her world filled with socialites and private club memberships. I came from a middle-class background, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. In Beatrice's eyes, I was beneath them. At first, Elliot defended me. "Give her time, Mom. She belongs here just as much as anyone else." I believed him, but over the years, his words became quieter. His loyalty shifted, especially when I failed to give them what they wanted most: a child. For 3 years, I endured fertility treatments, painful injections, and endless doctor visits. Each failure chipped away at me. Each negative test made me feel like less of a woman. And through it all, Beatrice's voice was there, whispering poison into Elliot's ear. The Lancaster name must continue. Maybe she just isn't meant to be a mother. A real wife would have given you a son by now. Still, I never expected this. Tonight was my birthday. Elliot had told me he had a surprise for me. I had spent hours getting ready, choosing a silk evening gown in his favorite color, styling my hair just the way he liked. I arrived at the family estate expecting a celebration. Instead, I walked into my own execution. "We've already made arrangements," Beatrice continued, her voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "Elliot will be moving forward with someone who can provide him an heir. You will leave quietly. Consider it a favor. We're giving you a dignified exit." I looked at my husband. No, the stranger standing in front of me. "Elliot, tell me this isn't real. Tell me you're not just throwing me away like garbage." His jaw tightened. He wouldn't even look at me. "It's for the best, Serena." The ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the murmurs of their wealthy friends watching the spectacle unfold. My fingers clenched at my sides, the sharp edges of my engagement ring pressing into my palm. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of sacrifice, and this was how it ended? I swallowed hard, refusing to let them see me break. "So that's it? You're just replacing me? Like I meant nothing?" Beatrice smirked. "You were never meant to be permanent, dear. Now, be a good girl and sign the papers." I turned my gaze to the divorce papers in Elliot's hands. The ink of his signature was already dry. He had made this decision long before tonight. The humiliation burned through me, but beneath it, something else stirred. Something stronger than pain. Rage. I reached for the papers slowly, my fingers brushing over the thick, expensive cardstock. I let my eyes linger on Elliot's signature, letting the betrayal sink deep into my bones. Then, without a word, I tore them in half. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Beatrice's face darkened. Elliot's head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with shock. "You think you can discard me this easily?" My voice was calm, too calm. I met Beatrice's gaze, holding it steady. "You have no idea who you just underestimated." I turned on my heel and walked out, my heart pounding with every step. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. They were wrong. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The echo of Beatrice's words still rang in my ears. We need a real woman to give us an heir. You were never meant to be permanent, dear. I should have cried. I should have fallen apart. But all I felt was cold, burning fury. I drove aimlessly through the city streets, the golden glow of streetlights blurring past me. 5 years. 5 years of my life wasted on a man who never saw me as his equal. 5 years of enduring snide remarks, forced smiles, and humiliation. And now they had the audacity to discard me like I was nothing. I pulled into the parking garage of my high-rise apartment, stepping out of the car in a daze. As I rode the elevator up, I noticed the envelope still clutched in my hand, the divorce papers I had torn in half. When I opened the door to our penthouse, I froze. The place had been ransacked. My closets were empty. My designer bags and jewelry, gone. Even the framed wedding photos had been removed from the walls, as if I had never existed here at all. Then I saw it. A single envelope sat on the marble kitchen island. Inside was a letter, written in Elliot's crisp, emotionless handwriting. Serena, this transition will be easier if you cooperate. I've had the apartment cleared of your belongings. A moving service will deliver the rest to a storage unit. You have 1 week to vacate. The credit cards have been canceled, and our joint accounts are now frozen. Please sign the revised divorce papers. Beatrice has arranged for a settlement, $50,000 for your cooperation. Don't make this difficult. Elliot. I read it twice, my breath catching in my throat. They had planned everything. They hadn't just taken my marriage. They had taken my home, my financial stability, and my dignity, all in a single night. $50,000. That was what 5 years of my life was worth to them. I let out a hollow laugh, the sound foreign even to myself. They thought I would take the money and walk away quietly, that I would accept my fate, tail between my legs. They were wrong. I grabbed my phone and dialed my lawyer, Mason Clark, one of the best in the city. When he picked up, I skipped the pleasantries. I need a counterattack. I had left the penthouse the next morning with nothing but my laptop, a suitcase, and my pride. My bank accounts were frozen, but I still had some savings, enough to stay in a hotel while I figured out my next move. Elliot and Beatrice moved quickly, announcing his engagement to Charlotte Vance, the daughter of a wealthy media mogul. The tabloids had a field day with it. A new beginning for New York's power couple. Serena Whitmore fades into obscurity. Obscurity? They thought I would fade away? I spent my days in meeting rooms poring over financial records with Mason. Our prenup was airtight, but Mason found a loophole: the investments I had made in Lancaster Holdings. I had poured my own money into Elliot's company, helping him secure major projects. And now, I wanted every last cent back. But then, something happened. A letter arrived at my hotel postmarked from London. The envelope was thick, official-looking. Confused, I tore it open. The first few lines made my heart stop. Dear Ms. Whitmore, we are reaching out regarding the execution of your grandmother Eleanor Whitmore's estate. As per the terms of her will, a trust fund containing $12 million has been set aside for you, set to be disclosed upon your 33rd birthday. The full details of the estate are outlined below. I dropped the letter, my hands trembling. $12 million. My grandmother had been wealthy, but she had always lived modestly. I never knew she had this. I swallowed hard, flipping through the rest of the documents. Then I saw something that made my breath catch. Lancaster Holdings. My grandmother had been a major investor in a competing real estate firm, one that had been battling Lancaster Holdings for years. And now, I was the new majority shareholder. I leaned back in my chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. They had tried to erase me, humiliate me, strip me of everything. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't just coming back. I was coming back to take everything from them. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new penthouse, watching the city lights flicker like embers in the night. In just 1 month, my life had transformed. I was no longer the discarded wife of Elliot Lancaster. I was Serena Whitmore, the woman who was about to bring down the entire Lancaster empire. The letter from my grandmother's lawyers had changed everything. Overnight, I had gone from a woman scrambling to survive to a force with the financial power to crush them. My inheritance didn't just give me money, it gave me leverage. Lancaster Holdings had thrived because of one thing: its ruthless expansion in New York real estate. They had built luxury towers, high-end condos, and massive commercial centers, crushing smaller developers in the process. But they weren't untouchable. I had access to their competitors, insider knowledge of their business deals, and most importantly, a reason to destroy them. And tonight, I was about to take my first shot. I adjusted my silk blouse and checked my reflection in the glass. Powerful, collected, dangerous. That's exactly how I needed to look. I grabbed my clutch and left the penthouse, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I stepped into the waiting black town car. I arrived at the Sterling Club, an exclusive lounge where only the city's wealthiest played. The hostess greeted me by name and escorted me to a private booth at the back. Sitting there, sipping a whiskey, was David Calloway, CEO of Calloway Properties, Lancaster Holdings' biggest rival. He looked up as I approached, his sharp blue eyes narrowing with curiosity. "Serena Whitmore, this is unexpected." I slid into the booth, crossing my legs gracefully. "I hear you have a problem, David." He leaned forward, intrigued. "And what problem would that be?" I placed a thick folder on the table and pushed it toward him. Inside were confidential financial records, documents proving that Lancaster Holdings was funneling money into shady offshore accounts, artificially inflating their profits to secure multi-billion-dollar deals. If this went public, it would destroy their reputation. David flipped through the pages, his expression darkening. "Where did you get this?" I smirked. "Let's just say I spent 5 years sleeping next to the enemy." A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. "And what do you want in return, Serena?" I leaned in, my voice deadly calm. "I want Lancaster Holdings dismantled, piece by piece." David let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "I underestimated you." "They did too," I said, my eyes flashing. David closed the folder and nodded. "You just made yourself a very powerful ally." As I walked out of the Sterling Club, my heart pounded. Not from fear, but from exhilaration. This was just the beginning. Lancaster Holdings was about to feel the weight of everything they had done to me. The next morning, headlines splashed across financial news sites. Lancaster Holdings under scrutiny for suspicious financial activity, investigations pending. By noon, their stocks plummeted. Investors panicked. Banks called in loans worth millions. And at the Lancaster estate, I imagined Beatrice pacing in a rage, while Elliot scrambled to save face. Then my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I answered, expecting it to be one of my lawyers. Instead, a familiar voice sent a shiver down my spine. "Serena, we need to talk." "Elliot." I froze for just a second before regaining control. "You have nothing I want to hear," I said coolly. "Please," he pleaded. "It's important." I almost hung up, but something in his voice stopped me. Desperation, panic, curiosity got the better of me. "Fine, 1 hour. My office." I arrived at my office earlier than expected, heart pounding with anticipation. When I stepped out of the elevator, my assistant rushed toward me, her face pale. "Miss Whitmore, you need to see this." She handed me a tablet. I looked at the screen and felt my stomach drop. A leaked photo. Me, sitting with David Calloway at the Sterling Club. Smiling, talking, conspiring. And the headline underneath? Betrayal in the boardroom. Serena Whitmore caught colluding with Lancaster Holdings' biggest rival. I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. Someone leaked this on purpose, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who it was. I barely had time to react before my office doors burst open. Elliot stood there, his face pale and furious. "What the hell did you do, Serena?" I looked at him, then back at the damning photo on the screen. The game had just changed. "Comment the number 1 if you want to see how Serena will turn this around." Elliot's eyes burned with fury as he stormed into my office, the leaked photo still glowing on his phone screen. "You've been working with Calloway?" he spat. "Are you insane?" I leaned back in my chair, forcing a smirk. "You didn't think I'd just disappear, did you?" He slammed the phone onto my desk, the screen cracking under the force. "You're trying to destroy me." I tilted my head. "No, Elliot, I'm succeeding." For the first time in his life, he looked truly powerless. Beatrice wasn't here to save him. The money, the reputation, the untouchable arrogance, it was all crumbling. "You think you're winning?" he hissed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. You have no idea what's coming." I arched a brow. "Then enlighten me." Elliot took a slow breath, as if gathering his composure. Then his lips curled into something almost sinister. "Do you really think I didn't know about your little meeting with Calloway?" My stomach twisted. "I had someone watching you." His voice was calm now, and somehow that made it worse. "I leaked that photo, Serena. And guess what? You didn't just screw me over. You just committed financial espionage." I kept my face unreadable, but inside, panic clawed at my chest. "I don't know how you got those documents," Elliot continued, "but Calloway Properties is now under investigation too. Every deal they've made is being audited. And because you're in bed with them, guess who's about to take the fall for all of it?" A cold chill ran down my spine. "You." It was brilliant. And I hated him for it. By leaking the photo, Elliot had spun the narrative. Instead of being exposed for financial fraud, he flipped the blame onto me. He made it look like I was the one conspiring to bring down companies illegally. Calloway was now under federal investigation, and because I was tied to him, so was I. Elliot wasn't fighting to win anymore. He was fighting to drag me down with him. "You played dirty," I murmured. He shrugged. "You taught me well." I exhaled slowly, pushing down the fear rising in my chest. I had one chance to turn this around. "Let me guess," I said, standing up. "You want something?" Elliot smirked. "Sign the divorce papers, take the $50,000 settlement, and walk away. Do that, and maybe, just maybe, I'll make this all go away." I let the silence stretch between us, pretending to consider his offer. Then I smiled. "Checkmate." Elliot frowned. "What?" I grabbed my phone and tapped the screen. The office door behind him swung open. Standing there was Mason Clark, my lawyer. And right beside him, 2 federal agents. Elliot went rigid. "What the hell is this?" Mason stepped forward, placing a thick file on my desk. "Serena, should I do the honors?" I nodded. Mason flipped the file open and slid a stack of documents in front of Elliot. "Elliot Lancaster, these are certified records proving that the financial fraud within Lancaster Holdings was orchestrated by you and Beatrice Lancaster." Elliot's face drained of color. "We've also obtained bank statements showing that you funneled offshore funds through shell corporations under Beatrice's name," Mason continued. "And thanks to Serena's careful documentation, we have timestamps, emails, and financial transfers. In other words, irrefutable evidence." Elliot's hands curled into fists. "You're bluffing." I picked up the final document and slammed it onto the desk. Oh, and this? This is a signed affidavit from one of your own accountants, testifying that you personally ordered the falsification of financial reports. Elliot's breath hitched. He reached for the document with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the words. And then, the realization hit him. He was done. The federal agent stepped forward. Elliot Lancaster, you are under investigation for financial fraud, corporate espionage, and tax evasion. You'll need to come with us. Elliot whipped around to face me, pure hatred flashing in his eyes. You set me up. I smirked. You shouldn't have underestimated me. As the agents placed him in handcuffs, the door opened once more, and in walked Beatrice Lancaster. Her expression was one of horror as she took in the scene. Her son being led away in cuffs, her empire collapsing. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. You think this makes you the winner? She spat. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough for her to hear. Oh, Beatrice, I whispered. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. She flinched. I turned away, watching as Elliot was dragged out of the office, his face pale with shock. The Lancaster family had tried to erase me, humiliate me, destroy me. Instead, I destroyed them. The headlines hit like a tidal wave. Lancaster Holdings collapses amid financial fraud scandal. Elliot Lancaster indicted, facing up to 20 years in prison. Beatrice Lancaster under federal investigation for money laundering. I stood in my penthouse, sipping my morning coffee as I scrolled through the endless news coverage. Everything had played out exactly as I planned. Elliot had been arrested. His empire was in ruins. His investors had turned on him. His so-called perfect fiancée, Charlotte, had dumped him the moment the scandal broke, vanishing like smoke in the wind. The man who had once humiliated me was now nothing more than a disgraced criminal, awaiting trial. As for Beatrice, she had tried to salvage what was left of Lancaster Holdings, but the board had unanimously voted her out. Stripped of her power, abandoned by her so-called friends, and facing potential legal charges, she had lost everything. And I was thriving. With my wealth and influence, I acquired what was left of Lancaster Holdings at a fraction of its worth. The once mighty empire was now mine. I dismantled it, piece by piece, selling off its assets and liquidating everything Beatrice had worked so hard to build. The Lancaster name, the legacy they had used to belittle me, was erased from the industry forever. But I wasn't done yet. One evening, I received an unexpected call. Ms. Whitmore, we have a visitor at reception. He says he knows you. I frowned. Who is it? There was a pause. Then the receptionist said, Elliot Lancaster. I smirked. Send him up. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and there he was. Elliot Lancaster, the man who had once stood at the top of the world, now nothing more than a broken shadow. His expensive suits were gone. His confident arrogance had vanished. His eyes were hollow, and the weight of his downfall hung over him like a storm cloud. Serena, please. His voice was hoarse, desperate. I leaned against my desk, arms crossed. Please what? He swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze. They froze all my accounts. My lawyers. They say I could go to prison for years. I have nothing left. I let the silence stretch, enjoying the way he squirmed under my gaze. This was the same man who had tossed me aside like I was nothing. The same man who had called me useless. And now, he was here, begging me for help. You destroyed me, he whispered. I tilted my head. No, Elliot. You destroyed yourself. He exhaled shakily. Serena, I loved you. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. You still care about me, right? I almost laughed. Instead, I took slow, deliberate steps toward him, stopping just inches away. You want my help? I asked softly. Hope flickered in his tired eyes. Yes. I smiled. Then I leaned in, and whispered the words he never thought he'd hear. No. Elliot's face crumpled, his shoulders sagged, and for the first time he truly realized there was no way out. Security arrived moments later. "Escort Mr. Lancaster out of my building," I instructed, turning away. As they dragged him toward the elevator, he thrashed, his voice raw. "Serena, please. Don't do this. I have nothing left." I didn't look back. The doors shut. And just like that, Elliot Lancaster was gone. Weeks later, I stood in front of a new sign being unveiled at the former Lancaster headquarters. The bold, gleaming letters read, "Whitmore Industries." A cheer erupted from the crowd. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes they left me in. And now, I was stronger, wealthier, and more powerful than I had ever dreamed. The Lancasters had tried to bury me. Instead, I rose higher than they ever could. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. Comment the number 1 if you think Serena's revenge was perfect. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories.